الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So last week we were talking about the respect, or we finished off the lesson speaking about the respect which is owed to teachers, and that is part of the adab when it comes to studying the religion, that one holds your teachers in esteem. And the value of teachers has been decreased over time because of the advent of social media and the convenience culture that we have. People don't feel they need teachers anymore because they have, of course, Google. All of their search engines are there. So we just touched upon this in the last lesson as well. So we start from page 14. Really interesting points today. So the Imam continues and he says, our teacher, very good, very interesting point he says here. Our teacher, the Venerable Imam Sadid ad-Din Shirazi, used to say, our elders stated that whoever wishes his son to be learned will have to cultivate traveling scholars, meaning provide for traveling scholars, esteem them, venerate them, as well as offer them remuneration, right? If one son does not become learned, then his grandson will, right? So he said that one of the ways to ensure that your offspring, your child, becomes a learned person is to honor and look after scholars and teachers. If you are not a scholar yourself, through the barakah of serving teachers, your offspring will become learned. And if they don't become learned, your grandchildren will become learned. And that's what we've seen so many times, righteous people in our communities who never had the opportunity because of circumstance to study the deen. They love the religion, they honor Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they offer their prayers, but they never had the opportunities to study the deen because they were migrating from one country to another, establishing themselves, looking after their families, working 7 days a week. It was a very, very hard life for them. And naturally, in such circumstances, it's not easy to dedicate 10 years of studying and so on. But because of their love for the deen, and because of their strong iman, and in many times because of their connection with awliya, essentially, because of their connection with righteous teachers and awliya, their offspring become learned. And everybody who now who feels that they are on a path of righteousness, whether whatever that path may be, always think to yourself, well, why is it that Allah has blessed me with an opportunity to serve the deen in this way? Why is it that He's given us the opportunity of following this path? 99 out of 100 times, it's because of our parents or grandparents, their du'as, but also according to this text, because they did something for the righteous. They looked after scholars, they looked after awliya in the past, they served them. And through the barakah of that, Allah Azza wa Jal, really inspires the next generations. It's part of the wider principle, isn't it? That if we do something good, that one of the ways Allah Azza wa Jal rewards us for that good action is that He blesses our offspring, or He blesses their offspring, right? So He may not give us the reward of what we're doing, or we may not see the results or the fruits of what we're doing, but we see it in the lives of our children. That all of a sudden our child has so many capabilities that we don't know where they get them from. It's because you might have done something, or your parents may have done something in the past which pleased Allah, right? So this statement which I just read is part of that broader principle. In venerating the teacher, avoid walking in front of him and sitting in his place, and do not begin speaking in his presence without his permission, and do not speak to any great extent before him without his permission. So these are some very orthodox classical etiquettes with teachers, right? That don't sit in his place, don't walk ahead of him, don't talk too much without his permission, right? It's so much beauty in that, isn't there? Just everybody knows their place, and everybody acts according to their position in the gathering. Now it's just anarchy now, where everybody just does what they want to do. There's no kind of cohesion. There's no thought process. There's no concept of adab, etiquettes, following the process and protocols, or honoring knowledge, honoring the ulama, the elders, and so on. Now it's just postmodern theory and thoughts. It's just why should I? Why should I do this? Everybody is doing their own thing. Whereas classically in Islam, everybody knew their place. So if someone's younger, the elder talks. The younger ones do things for the elders. They look after the elders. They respect them, especially when someone has knowledge. So this is confirmed in what we're reading now. One should not ask him any question when he is weary. So if your teacher's tired, don't burden your teacher with questions when they're tired. Right. And unfortunately, I made that mistake a couple of times. But you learn very quickly that you don't want them teaching you to be a hardship for them. One should observe the correct time and refrain from knocking on his door, but have patience until the teacher comes out. Right. So you don't chase your teacher. Right. Let the teacher come when he's ready. Right. Again, it's so much beauty in this. There's adab. I mean, people, they're all completely lost now. If your teacher makes you wait 5 minutes, though, why is he late? Where's my teacher? Why is he? This is ridiculous. It's like we're supposed to start at, it's 8:30 and it's 8:32 now. The teacher will come when he's ready. Because this is all part of, or kind of reflects the notion that you want something he has. He has something that you need. So you will wait for that. If he makes you wait, then wait. It's worth waiting for, right? So we're not in a position to demand things from our teachers. Right? We are lucky that they're giving us any time at all, and they are spending their time teaching us. All right, and so they're doing us a great favor, a great privilege. We're not entitled to this knowledge, and we're not entitled to their time either. So if they take time out to teach you, then count your blessings, right? And this is again when we were studying, this is how we tried to be. Is that look, alhamdulillah, if they give us time, alhamdulillah. If they don't, they don't. If they're tired, then so be it. If they're not available today, it's okay. Whatever works for the teacher, that's what you do. In short, one should seek his approval, avoid his resentment, and obey his commands in those things which are not sinful in the eyes of Allah Azza wa Jal. Revering the teacher includes respecting the teacher's children and those related to him. Okay, another interesting point. Imam Burhanuddin, the author of Hidayah, narrated that one of the greatest Imams of Bukhara used to sit when lecturing, and at times he rose in the middle of his discourse. The great Imam who used to give lectures, hundreds of people. During his lecture, he used to stand up. When asked the reason, he explained, "The son of my teacher was playing with the boys on the street and sometimes came to the gate of the masjid. As often as I saw him, I arose for him in order to honor my teacher." Right? So he stood up throughout his discourse. When he was asked why, he said, "Because I saw my teacher's son playing with the boys outside, and he used to come to the gates of the masjid. And when I saw him, then I used to stand up out of izzah for my teacher and to honor my teacher." That's by standing up for his son, who's a child, right? It's powerful stuff. I mean, in today's day and age, again, I have to comment on this because, there's a lot of, because our hearts are so impure, generally speaking, and, the righteous of the past are not the righteous of today, then the community of the past is not the community of today. Um, we have to be follow that principle for sure, but it's very, very important that we don't create egotistical maniacs in the process, and that's starting to happen now. We've seen it so many times where people feel that there's a sense of entitlement, that there is a sense of rightfulness, that I am such and such a son, therefore you must respect me. Now, the son in this story, he would not expect the Imam to stand up for him, nor should he ever do so. But out of love for his teacher, the Imam stands up. It's a difference, isn't it? Is one is when the Imam, the student, he stands up out of love and veneration and out of respect for his teacher, but it's a very different thing when the son of the teacher expects it, right? Or even the teacher expects it for their own sake, right, to satisfy their ego. Okay, so there's a balance here. One is from the teacher side or the son of the teacher side, and the others from the student side. The student should always have that sense of servitude and adab, but the teacher and his offspring must also have that fakiri in them. Right? That's the best word I can use. That fakiri is that the acknowledgement that I am nothing. Allah has honored me with some understanding, but notwithstanding that, it's not for them to demand certain protocols. That's against the adab of being a teacher as well, that you crave it or you desire it for yourself. Okay, so craving respect and adab for yourself, that is against the principles of righteousness. Of course it is. But again, there is a concept of honoring the position that Allah has given you. So if Allah has made you a teacher or He's made you a guide, then you must do your best to honor that position, right? Because you're not like you are like everybody else, but you have a particular position. You must do your best to fulfill that responsibility that you have. But notwithstanding that, the example is there. So, as a general rule, where you have teachers, honor their children, look after them, and it's a very natural and logical thing as well. Is that if you love someone, you love their children as well, and you want to look after someone, you look after their offspring as well. The judge Imam Fakhruddin al-Sabandi was the chief Imam in a place. The Sultan held him in the highest regard. Fakhruddin frequently said, I have reached this rank only by serving my teacher. For I have served my teacher, Imam Abu Zayd Dabusi. I both waited on him and prepared his food for 30 years, but I never ate anything thereof. So he says, so this Imam here, Fakhruddin, he became the chief Imam, and the Sultan used to love him, look after him, hold him in high regard. He said, I only got to this position by serving my teacher. And I served him food for 30 years and I never ate from it myself. Right? Complete servitude, right? So again, it goes to show that the barakah in these practices, we don't truly appreciate them. Only later in life do we sometimes realize the reason that we are reaping the rewards is because we did certain things throughout our lives in the past. Okay. Yeah, this is a very interesting one now. It says Imam al-Hulwani left Bukhara and settled for some time in a certain town because of an incident which befell him. His students visited him with the exception of Imam Abu Bakr Zaranji. So there's all of his students visited him except for this one student. When he met him, Al-Hulwani, the Sheikh, he asked him, why did you not come to visit me? Abu Bakr, the student said, I was occupied in serving my mother. Al-Hulwani said, you will obtain a livelihood, and Umar, meaning you will attain livelihood and long life. So there will be barakah in that for you because you're serving your mother, but you will not attain the splendor of teaching. But you're not going to attain any of the fruits of teaching. And this is just what happened. For Abu Bakr lived most of his life in villages and was unable to carry on lectures. Thus, one is deprived of the fruits of learning when he slights his teachers, and only in a small way does he benefit from his knowledge. So you got this person here now, a student, who said to his teacher, I was serving my mother. Now the Jannah is at the feet of your mother. You can never do justice to her rank and you can never serve her enough. And that's the reality. It doesn't matter who you are. It's an unconditional and it's one of the gateways to heaven for sure. But the Imam is narrating the story, which is a true story, to illustrate that there are certain people who have certain roles that they have to fulfill. Now, here, that student had been blessed with knowledge which he had a responsibility to nurture and teach. And because he was unable to do that, he was then unable to fulfill his responsibilities of teaching. That doesn't mean to say he was, of course, he was rewarded immensely. Of course, he was. But the point is that sometimes to fulfill roles that Allah has given you, there are certain steps you have to take, and one of them is, which is integral, is serving your teachers. Right? You can't compromise on that. It has to be there, and there are certain people who are chosen for that role and have to prioritize that role. Okay. It is reported that Khalifa Harun Rashid sent his son to a learned man to study grammar and adab, to learn Arabic grammar and to learn adab etiquettes. One day the Khalif saw the righteous man purifying himself and washing his feet, whilst the Khalifa's son poured water over his feet. Right? So the Khalifa sent his son to a righteous man. The righteous man was doing wudu. Khalifa's son was pouring water for him. The Khalifa reprimanded the righteous man and said, I sent my son to you so that you teach him adab, right? So why is it that you don't ask him to pour the water and wash your feet for you? Meaning that's the correct adab here, that he's a student of knowledge, a student of learning. He has come to a righteous sheikh for tarbiyah, for training. So the Khalifa is saying that if you are really training my son, he should be pouring the water and he should be washing your feet for you while you just sit there. Right? Okay. Classical training is not easy. Well, the objective of these things is to destroy the nafs and to completely annihilate the pride which grows within young people. And we see today is that young people are so haughty, they're so proud, they're so arrogant, they're so self-confident, many of them, externally anyway. And they think there's something so tremendous, but the reality is they're just kids. They have no life experience, a lot of them. They have very bad habits. They have very little training, very little life experience. But, it's just the culture in which they grow up. Because they never sit with righteous ulama, righteous awliya, who can then train them and to break down that ego and to control that ego, because they never submit to anyone. They just got out of control. And it's a very sad state of affairs that this is the majority of youngsters now. They're just out of control. No authority is there for them. Never mind teachers, parents, nothing, fathers, nothing, mothers, nothing, police are nothing. The judges, nobody. It's just lawlessness. In some parts, because and one of the reasons for that is because we've completely broken away from the tradition of finding shuyukh, finding ulama to sit with and go through that training, and to trust them to do that training. Now, you can equally argue, to be fair, that there aren't many people like that anymore who can offer that training, who can offer that teaching, which is also true. So I think it's there are various issues. One, that perhaps there aren't that many people who are committed to and are capable of offering the training, and secondly, there's a lack of students. So there's a lack of teachers and a lack of students. So which one causes the other? I suppose that generations have gone by where the level of learning has gone down, and because students have slowly failed to reach the mark, that then results in a lack of teachers. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle, really. But it suffices to say, for the sincere seeker, there will always be a path to Allah Azza wa Jal. There's no two ways about that. If you are a seeker and you're genuine and you remain steadfast in that desire, Allah Azza wa Jal will find a path for you and create a path for you towards Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay. Um, and then he speaks about the veneration of knowledge also is reflected in veneration of the Quran Sharif. But then he continues a slightly different point. He said, the student should not pick up the book unless he's in a state of purity, meaning the Quran, of course not. it has been told that Imam al-Hulwani, the same one mentioned earlier, said, I obtained my learning by means of veneration, for I never took up paper unless I was pure. So even reading, writing books of fiqh, any lessons, they never started without being pure. Imam Sarakhsi, he's one of the great fuqaha, had abdominal issues, and right, so he had abdominal issues, meaning he couldn't keep his wudu for very long. But he always wanted to recite the Quran at night. So he purified himself 17 times in order not to resume reciting without being pure. So every night, Imam Sarakhsi, yeah, a great fuqaha, a great faqih from the fuqaha, right? He had an issue. 17 times he used to do his wudu every night just so he could continue reciting the Quran. Right now, if we can't keep our wudu, we just say, doesn't matter, we'll do it later. When we have to read salah, we'll refresh our wudu then. But the righteous people, and I heard about somebody else in India recently passed away, that he was never without wudu. And people used to invite him to the UK, and he said, I can't come to the UK because I've never been without wudu and I can't risk it. So every time his wudu broke, he'd refresh it straight away, even if it's 10 times a day. So these things, people have those levels of righteousness, and can you imagine that, apart from sleeping, when obviously it's excused, from the moment you're awake to the moment you're evening, you sleep in the evening, you're always in wudu, right? That's real levels of piety there. Okay. Veneration of learning includes veneration of one's companions in the quest for knowledge and one's fellow students during a lecture session. Adulation is blameworthy, meaning praise generally is blameworthy, except in the quest of knowledge. For at times it becomes necessary to praise one's teacher and one's fellow students in order that one can profit from their learning. Okay, so part of the respect of learning. So he's looking at all the different avenues and the different ways of respecting learning. So one is to have love and adab of the subject, of the book, of the teacher, of the Quran, and even the fellow students that you have. Okay, so if someone's studying alongside you, they are, worthy of your respect as well. In seeking knowledge, it is essential to listen to words of knowledge and wisdom with reverence and veneration, even if one hears the same question and same words 1,000 times. It is said that when one's respect for knowledge after hearing it 1,000 times is not equal to his respect for the first time, he's not worthy of knowledge. Right? And this happens as well, is that sometimes we're listening to talks or lectures or subjects that we've already heard these things. Yeah, I've heard this before, I've heard it before, I've heard this before. But the sign of a sincere student is to listen attentively and to revere the words that are being spoken, even if you've heard it 1,000 times. Because ultimately, what's being spoken about is Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So even if someone says the most obvious points, our job is not to say, yeah, that's obvious. Our job as students and seekers say, Alhamdulillah, so beautiful. Thank you for the reminder. Because not everything has to be new content. We have a concept of reminders as well, isn't it? So being reminded about the basic blessings of Allah, right? Because seekers of knowledge, they love to hear anything which brings them closer to Allah, even if they've heard it several times before. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. So it's like reciting the Quran and again. It only enhances your experience and your love. In seeking knowledge, it is necessary that one not choose by himself the kind of learning to pursue, but to entrust the matter to the teacher. Right? So don't even choose your own subjects, let your teacher choose. For indeed, the teacher has gained more experience in these matters, such that he's more knowledgeable of what is needed for each person and what is suitable to the nature of the student. Imam Burhanuddin used to say, in the quest for learning in early times, the students entrusted their affairs of learning to their teacher, and in this manner did they reach their goals and aims. But nowadays they make their own choices and fail to reach their objectives in religious and legal knowledge. Okay, right? So he's talking long time ago. People have started to make their own choices, and then that's why they fall short. Okay, so this idea of um, submitting to and obeying and following the recommendations of a teacher is very classical training. Okay, it of course goes without saying that the teacher must be a genuine teacher, and you have to find righteous teachers to you know to share that knowledge with you, and those who you feel genuinely after observing them for some time are worthy of that respect. He says the student should not sit too close to the teacher during a lecture. In fact, it is important that the pupils sit in a semicircle at a certain distance from the teacher. This is more appropriate in showing due respect. So he's gone so far as to say that even in how you sit, how close you sit to the teacher, there's adab about that as well. Don't cramp the teacher's space, give the teacher space. Right? Sit in a semicircle, obviously in the masjid or whatever. Right? So give the teacher space. And of course, be weary and to guard oneself against shameless traits or characteristics. Okay. It is said knowledge is hostile to the haughty youth, just as torrential rain is hostile to the highlands. That's what I was just saying. So the youth who are arrogant within themselves, knowledge is hostile to them, meaning they will never be able to benefit. They see it as attack. If you say these things to young people now, so why should I? This is ridiculous. Why should I let my teachers choose? Why should I show them that much respect? Why should, who are they anyway? I can do what I want. They're not that great. And someone spent 20 years studying. So what? What do you want me to do about that? This is such a belittling attitude that young people have now. And it's summed up in what he's just said here. Knowledge is hostile to the haughty youth, right? They just can't handle it because they've actually got to leave the ego at the door, take a few steps down, and sit and learn and do what the teacher tells you. And they just can't hack it. They actually just can't tolerate that. The egos can't tolerate it. So the whole pursuit of knowledge is just alien to them. That's why people don't study anymore. Okay. Um, all glory is attained by exertion, not by luck. Okay. Is not by luck. So meaning if we really are serious and we want to become closer to Allah, we have to exert ourselves. It's not by chance people become great awliya, by great teachers, by hard work. It's by studying, by dedicating, by sacrificing, by commitment, by all of those things which are required. That's how people attain rank, not by luck. It's not just they woke up one day and all the knowledge came into their hearts. They've actually spent time learning and teaching. Okay, so inshallah that ends chapter 4. Next week, inshallah, we'll start chapter 5, which is about perseverance and steadfastness and so on. So inshallah, hopefully that was beneficial. I think smaller doses of this book are better because the content is quite dense, I find as well. So inshallah, Aziz, we will continue next week. Inshallah, remember in your du'as, and see you next Wednesday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallahu khairan.